to political capital, where money and power meet. Following Zimbabwe's landmark election and the violence that we saw descend on the streets of Harare, the questions are about the outlook of the country, at least from an investment perspective. Now, the government has enacted the draconian piece of legislation from 2002 called the Public Order and Securities Act. But how will that influence the rate of investments into Zimbabwe? Joining me is Tino Mambeu, who is the coordinator for Zimbabwe Exiles Forum. Sir, for your time, I thank you. Let's begin by looking at the events leading up to today. Zimbabwe is not quite the country that voted so peacefully 2 days ago. What's gone wrong, and what kind of message is that sending out to the world outside of Zimbabwe?
Thank you very much for having me on your show, Karabo. I think the most important part here, we should note the processes that have led to this election in terms of how the electoral management body has carried out the whole process. I think you'll remember very well that there's been massive demonstrations in Harare with people coming out in the streets demanding a level playing field. Now, the mark of any democracy is not far from how people or how processes of choosing leaders are managed. So a big determinant of democracy is based on the electoral process.
The electoral process has always been has never been without controversy from a Zimbabwe point of view. This is not the first time we are here. Why do we always descend into violence following elections?
Yes, because people are then taken into an election with an uneven playing field. Now, the result of an uneven playing field can be interpreted as fraud. So, as people go into elections, they are already skeptical. There is too much suspicion between the citizens and the government and the state institutions that are responsible for managing and taking care of electoral processes.
Okay, we're here now. MDC supporters and apparently some ZANU stooges as well were part of the protest that we saw on the streets of Harare yesterday. The question still remains, if this is the situation, as soon as the parliamentary results are released, are we in for more violence once the presidential results are released? And what does that say for Zimbabwe's investment case?
Well, we expect that after the announcement of the final result, there will be process to ensure that grievances as a result of this electoral process will be handled in a fair and just manner. It will be very gross to expect further violence than what we have seen. I think you would have seen that the soldiers went into the streets of Harare, shot people indiscriminately without giving credency to human life. I do not think it's going to get much worse than it has been already yesterday. So as we go and as we wait for the announcement at 9 p.m., the investors are looking at Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe once again has found itself on the global media. And this time is for the wrong reason. That is why the SADC bloc and the African Union must spend their time in making sure that they invest in free, fair and credible processes towards election.
I get that you don't hold SADC's view in high regard. And truthfully so, you've been scarred.
Of course, in this regard, I think there has been a SADC pronouncement on the election. And also the European Union Observer Mission has weighed in and said these elections were far from being free, fair or credible. Now, that technically means that the foreign direct investment, which we are particularly waiting for, I think you will remember that we are coming from November, where the government of Robert Mugabe was deposed, and his vice president came into power as a result of a military action. That military action produced a kind of an illegitimate situation. That illegitimate situation failed to attract significant sums of capital. Hence, the legitimacy issue is at the center of this particular plebiscite.
That's not what Mnangagwa will say. Mnangagwa will say that I have MOUs and all these things, all these investments that I've been speaking about will trickle in come the end of the election. My question with regards to that is, Mnangagwa, is he seen more as a business friendly president? And how much do we know about the economic policies of either of these two candidates that are vying for presidency?
In terms of economic policies, the promises as per their manifestos are almost similar. But what is lacking right now in this current dispensation is the people's confidence in the government. I think you'll understand that people struggle to get money out of banks in Zimbabwe. And that is a factor that is influenced by the lack of confidence in the banking system. So these elections would have provided a fresh start into the country. But as long as they remain illegitimate and they are disputed, you will remember that the United States of America has not lifted specific sanctions under the ZDERA Act, under the ZDERA program in America, which targets certain individuals and prohibits them from doing business with the government of Zimbabwe or entities in Zimbabwe. That is still going to be a problem. To make it worse, people have just been shot in the streets. It does not present a proper outlook for the, for the country's economy.
Okay, the IMF projects, well, I guess it was prior to these elections, they projected that Zimbabwe could grow at about 2.7% this year. Is that still possible within the current dynamics as to how the elections unfolded?
It will depend on the next 24 hours. If the results come in favorably, as most of the citizens would prefer, then I think there will be some kind of confidence from the citizens. Remember, economics is not just about investors coming into a country and investing.
It's about the internal confidence first.
Yes, you have got to get the confidence of your citizen. Do you have citizens that support your policies? If your citizens do not support your policies, they will hijack them or they will ignore them altogether.
You said something very interesting. You said if the results come in as the majority of Zimbabweans expect them. What is that expectation? Under
these circumstances, it is believed that the popular vote has gone to the opposition under the leadership of Nelson Chamisa. So if the popular vote has gone that way, anything short of that confirmation or declaration will be unfavorable.
That's a very interesting situation because as we stand now, even if Nelson Chamisa was to win the presidential election, he will essentially be presiding over a parliament that owns him because ZANU has won the parliamentary majority.
He has got an option. I think under the executive orders of the president, he can dissolve parliament and call for free, fair, credible elections supervised by a body that is not corrupted.
That would be a longer process for Zimbabwe into getting back into the world order, as it were. Wouldn't that just put Zimbabwe at a perpetual state of limbo?
It depends with who owns the levers of power. It's one area to have. The biggest problem that we have here is ZANU-PF has been in power for almost 38 years. Now they have not done well to be able to be trusted, in parliament with such a majority. That is a shock at the nation altogether. And they are saying, are they going to go well or are they going to just use the majority to put a majority of money in their pockets than, providing majority wealth to the people of Zimbabwe?
Mr. Mambeu, I must ask you this. Part of the problem with Zimbabwe is that it had leaders who've stayed in power for too long. Some of these characters will surely spring up with Mnangagwa, who was also part of the ZANU-PF government of Robert Mugabe. My question is, doesn't Zimbabwe need leaders that can take it into the fourth industrial revolution? I don't look at the ZANU leadership and think that they are techno-savvy. So
that is true.
One almost has the implication of growing the economy at a bigger rate than the other. What is the better scenario here for Zimbabweans?
The first good scenario for Zimbabwe is to have a president that has got the mandate of the people. Now, that mandate is not based on the age of an individual. It is solely based on the individual ability to curtail corruption, to provide jobs, to negotiate good deals with investors that will bring confidence into the economy, confidence into the citizens. And at the end of the day, Zimbabwe has got to win, regardless of whoever has taken power.
Sir, for your time.
Thank you very much.
I thank you. That was Mr. Tino Mambeu, who is the coordinator for Zimbabwe's Exile Forum. There'll be more Political Capital next week, Tuesday at 6:30. I'll be sitting down with the ANC's head of economic transformation. Until then, good evening.